Hello, today I'm here to introduce you to the MyGeotab API adapter. First question is, what is the MyGeotab API adapter? Essentially what it is a application that's been developed to allow you to use the MyGeotab SDK to stream data from your MyGeotab database into a relational database in your environment. From there, data can be extracted from the adapter database to be integrated into your data warehouse, your own applications, or even third-party applications that might have APIs of their own. In terms of what this looks like, in this diagram you'll see in the top left the GeoTab environment, which is in Google Cloud Platform. Your MyGeotab database is going to be there along with the MyGeotab API. On the right side you'll see your environment. Now this might be your own on-premise environment, or it could be a hosted cloud environment. In either situation, you're going to install the MyGeotab API adapter solution within your environment, and it's going to include two main components. There's the adapter application and the adapter database, which is paired with it. From there, you'll build your own integration, which will then connect data from the adapter database to your own data warehouse or your applications or the third-party applications. The key in this diagram is to understand that your integration is now actually going through the adapter database, which is a relational database that pretty much any developer knows how to work with, versus having to build the entire infrastructure to work with the MyGeotab API. Why would you be interested in using the MyGeotab API adapter? Well, first and foremost, many integrations that involve integrating GeoTab data with external platforms are primarily focused on extracting data from the GeoTab database so that it can be married up with data in other platforms to make it much more powerful. So if that's the main purpose of your integration, this can save you a lot of time and money because half your work might already be done. In addition, the MyGeotab API adapter can also serve as a practical example, demonstrating how to properly use the API within the context of an actual application. So instead of just small snippets and examples that focus on specific methods, this really is a good example of how you would actually stitch those all together in an actual application where you need to consider various things. So this can also help, of course, speed up your application development if you're building your own application by simply following some of the practices that are used within there. And it can also help to avoid some of the costly pitfalls that are sometimes encountered by those that improperly use the GeoTab API. In terms of cost, there's no charge for the MyGeotab API adapter. Now, of course, people are going to wonder what's the catch. Well, unlike the MyGeotab user interface or the GeoTab Drive application, this is basically MIT license, so it's available free of charge and it's up on GitHub, but you don't have the same level of support or ability to request features as you would for the other official products. Now, if it doesn't exactly meet your needs, you're free to download the source code from GitHub and modify it as required, or simply refer to it as a source of API usage examples. One caveat that's important to note also is that any updates made to the adapter solution, whether it's bug fixes or feature enhancements, are not backported to older releases. So if you choose to download the adapter solution from GitHub and modify it to make it your own, then it's incumbent upon you to monitor for updates. So in case there's any bug fixes or enhancements that you want to include in your solution, then it's up to you to port those into your version of the solution. In terms of database support, out of the box, the adapter solution currently supports SQL Server and by extension Azure SQL, as well as PostgreSQL and SQLite. SQLite's really there mainly for people that want to play with the adapter and see what it does without having to go to the extent to set up SQL Server or Postgres, which are a little bit more involved, but which you would actually use in a production environment. Should also be noted that the solution could be modified relatively easily to add support for other database providers. Really the main point there is that as long as there's a proper .NET ADO provider for the subject database, it's very likely that you can use the solution with that database as well, with very little code modification required. With regard to the data that the adapter can download, there's two main classifications. The first one would be feed data, which would include things like log records, which is your GPS data, as well as all the engine data that are coming from the vehicles. So really this is generated data. And then you have the other category, which is reference data. That would include things like your list of devices, users, diagnostics, etc. In addition to the data that's listed here, again, the solution can be modified very easily to download additional data feeds. We've already basically encapsulated the most common and the most desired data elements within the solution. So it's likely that it's going to get most of the things that you would require. In terms of how the solution can be used practically speaking within the scope of an integration to a third-party application, there's a few examples here where the adapter could be used. Before we get specifically into those, it should be noted that since we're essentially extracting data from the Geotab platform and making it available in the database, hence the term adapter, you can pretty much do anything that you would do if you were using the API directly. The only limitation is that perhaps the adapter might not be pulling the exact data that you need, in which case, again, it can be modified for that. But really, the sky's the limit. Now, in terms of these examples here, the first example is a predictive maintenance example, where essentially we're leveraging the engine status and fault data that's being extracted in order to help prevent downtimes and associated disruptions. The second example for field services, where we want to optimize routing for field services, we're really focused on using the vehicle location data. And then the third example, we're monitoring and reviewing driver behavior. We're using a combination of the vehicle location data as well as driver and exception rule violation information. So really it's just, the scenarios just use different sets of data that are being pulled from your MyGeotab database. Now the adapter can be obtained from GitHub, and here's the URL where you can find it. Now of course, developers are going to be familiar with GitHub, but not everyone has used GitHub. And so for that reason, we've created this demo video. Now in this demo video, the objective here is really to just provide a very quick overview of how you can download the adapter from GitHub and start using it. And in this case, we're not interested in the code itself. We just want to download it, set it up, start using it, see what data it pulls down, and then from there, be able to decide if the adapter solution is actually something that's usable for us. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to go to the GitHub at the URL provided. We're going to download the latest release. We're going to grab the Windows version as well as the SQLite database. Now on our local Windows machine, we're going to extract the adapter application, and we're also going to extract the SQLite database and a handy script that comes along with it. Then we go into the application folder and we're going to modify the app settings.json file. So we're going to change it so that we're going to point it to the SQLite database. We need to make sure that we specify the appropriate path where we've downloaded it. And then we enter the login settings. And so this section is really the credentials that you would use to log into the MyGeotab database. So usually it's going to be a service account. Once we've done that, we're going to configure it to pull all the data from the database, and we're going to adjust the feed so that they're going to pull at a maximum frequency of every 2 seconds. Then we save that. Once we've done that, we can find the executable and launch it, and you'll see the console window pops up indicating that the adapter is running and pulling data. Once the adapter has been pulling data, we can open up our handy script that comes along with it. We'll just copy that. And then we can go to the DB browser for SQLite, and we're going to open up the SQLite database. With the database open, we can paste in that script and run it. And now you can see that we've got record counts showing the data in the different tables. And then of course we can also browse the data in those tables. And so it's really that simple to download the adapter and start pulling data using the adapter solution. Now, of course, that gives you an idea of how the adapter works, and based on that, you might decide, okay, that's great, but we want to modify it. So for the developers out there, you're going to wonder, how do I get the source code? Okay, this demo video here will be similar to the previous one, but this one focuses more on downloading the code and starting to debug the adapter so that you can essentially get the same result but using it in Visual Studio. So the first thing we're going to need is a Git client in order to be able to download the code. So Git SCM, that's just a commonly used one here. So we download that and install it. Then we're going to go back up to GitHub at the same URL. And this time we're going to go grab the cloning URL. Now on our local machine, we're going to open up our Git client and we're going to clone an existing repository. We paste in the URL that we just grabbed, and then we need to specify a target directory where we're going to download the code to. And we'll add a subfolder as well, and finally click the clone button. And that's going to go ahead and download all the source code. And once we've downloaded it, we can close our Git client, navigate into the folder, you'll see the code there. We open up the solution, that's going to launch Visual Studio. And once we're in Visual Studio, we can navigate into the solution, and again we'll have to modify the app settings file. So we're going to point to the SQLite database again, and once we've done that, we again also need to enter the MyGeotab credentials so that we can access the database to pull down our data. And then of course we can modify any of the other settings as well. Once we're done, we save that, and then we can actually launch the debugger. And when we do that, we'll see the console window is going to pop up, again indicating that it's running and pulling data down into our SQLite database. Now back in Windows Explorer, we can navigate to our SQLite database, which is in one of the subfolders. We can just right click on that, and then we're going to open it up. In this case, we've got the DB browser for SQLite, which is a free tool. So we open that up again. We could use the same script as we did before, or in this case, we're just showing you that we can browse the data and see what's been downloaded. So same as our previous example. So there you can see that the two different approaches. So some people will want to just download the adapter and start using it as is, and other people are going to be interested in downloading the code, being able to step through the code and debug, and you're able to do it that way as well. Now, in terms of finding more information, this has been a very basic overview. So using this information that you have now, you're able to download it and just start to play with it and see what it's all about. But there's a full version of the adapter presentation, which includes this content as well as a lot more information in the various areas. That's probably a good start to get some further information to confirm whether or not this is for you. And most importantly, the MyGeotab API Adapter Solution and Implementation Guide is really the official source for all information related to the MyGeotab API Adapter. So this is really a general document for all audiences. If you're a business analyst and you need to get a high-level understanding of the solution architecture and whether or not this will meet the business needs, or if you're a solution architect, you need to understand how the solutions are architected, or perhaps you're a developer that actually needs to work with the MyGeotab API, this document will target you in various sections. Now, in terms of content of the document, we won't actually go through the document now, but there's a solution architecture which will show you how it's set up, similar to the diagram we saw here, but then there's an expanded version as well with some more detail. Most importantly is the data dictionary section that's included there. So what you're going to be doing essentially is pulling data from a Geotab database into this database that's going to reside in your environment, and then you're going to build an integration off of that. So the data dictionary is going to be critical in understanding which tables are there, the data types, the various fields, etc. And so everyone's going to be able to make good use of that. Now, in addition to that, if you decide to modify the adapter for whatever reason, there's a section here that shows you how you can be able to publish and deploy that modified version of the solution. So there's step-by-step instructions with screenshots for that. In addition, some will want to have support for other database types that aren't included at present. So there's a section there that describes how you can actually add support for other databases. It's generally very easy. So starting from SQLite, adding support for Postgres and SQL Server was very easy. It doesn't require modification of the business logic. And so those are the steps generally that will help guide you in that area if you need to add support for other databases. There's another section that goes through an extensive example, including code snippets, that would show you how to add a new data feed. So this is, for example, if you don't see the data that you're interested in listed in this document, for example, you can follow all these steps. It uses the log record feed, which is an existing feed, as an example. And using that example, including the code snippets, you can follow through and see all the exact steps you would need to do to be able to add a different data feed. So it makes it very useful for your developers to get up to speed quick. And it's much easier than having to learn by just reading examples of individual API methods. There's also a section that's important to read, which is near the end of the document, which includes basically some examples that help you to understand how to work with some of the different tables in the adapter database. So there are some tricks when working with certain objects in the MyGeotab API. And since this adapter essentially downloads that data and keeps the data available in database tables, some of those same tricks will apply here as well. And so it's important to understand for some of those tables how to work with it properly so that you don't start developing things and go down the wrong path. But this guide really is going to be useful. It includes all the information you'll need. If you go through anything you could think of to ask, you'll find an answer for it in there. And so with that, I hope that you've had a good overview of what the MyGeotab API adapter solution is and how it can help your organization. Thanks for attending.